Hi and welcome to this new Tool Lab series. This is where everyday workshop challenges turn into practical tools designed and tested in my own shop. My name is Dennis and this is Hooked on Wood. And in this episode we are focusing on my TrueMark T-Ruler series, the T-Ruler I created in collaboration with Hong Dui, after using some of the best ones out there. And to make it even more interesting, I'm going to put the Angle Ruler version up against a real benchmark to see how it holds up on the workbench. And this time we have to go to the extreme because it's otherwise difficult to show you the high quality of this T-Ruler. And I've tested a lot of tools over the years, partly thanks to this channel, and based on that experience I can tell you this. Truly practical design, the kind that starts at the workbench, is surprisingly rare. And I will show you that even top brands still make design choices that feels more marketing driven than problem driven. So let's see if our TrueMark rulers are one of those rare exceptions. Most T-rulers today have holes every millimeter for drawing parallel lines. And this sounds useful, but for measuring and marking it's not the feature you use the most. Yet those holes visually dominate the scale. So I kept the scale as clean as possible. But since parallel lines are still a basic function, I built a controlled set and go solution for that workflow. And I admit Grid City has an elegant looking solution, but to my surprise it didn't really work in practice. The magnets are simply far too weak, and on wood with grain the pencil just follows the grain instead of staying on line. So this is one of those examples where a top brand just fails the practical test. So we developed our LineMaster. It's an add-on you can slide onto the ruler and lock down any way you want. And this works perfectly. But that's only part of the story, because this approach has more benefit than having holes every 1 millimeter. First you can set the LineMaster by aligning them to a workpiece, like on this diffuser. I line them up with the slats, and when I flip it over they become reference points for screwing everything in from the underside. And because you're not forced to use the tiny holes, you're not locked into one specific pencil thickness. So now on wood with a rough grain or on dark materials we can use a thicker lead or a white marking pencil. And another benefit is 0.5 millimeter steps for parallel lines, something most T-rulers simply can't do. And with the LineMaster, setting 0.5 millimeter is quick and easy. And to take it even one step further, we added a vernier scale with an 0.2 millimeter resolution. So now you get a clean, easy to read main scale, but when you need it, you can dial it in extremely fine adjustments. And to put that vernier scale into context, we added it because we could. It's not a feature you will use all the time. It's not designed for that. But when you do need it occasionally, it gives you a solid reference and lets you dial it in as accurately as possible. And from that same platform we also developed a 60 centimeter version as an angle ruler. So to make this even more interesting, let's put it next to the over 300 euros Woodpeckers Protractor, which many people consider the benchmark. And there was one frustration I ran into immediately the first time I used the Woodpeckers Protractor. On a common 80mm workpiece, you can't use it properly on the bench. You have to move the workpiece to the edge just to make it usable. And what I found really odd is that a company like Woodpeckers choose oversized knobs and unnecessary bulk over simple everyday usability on a very common 80mm workpiece. That feels like a marketing win, but it is a workshop compromise. And to be fair, Woodpecker isn't the only one. Grid City runs into the same issue with 80mm material. So that became a hard requirement for our design. And talking about frustrations, I have to show you their scale, because this is something nobody talks about. And I've noted this on every woodpecker tool I own, and it's really odd. From a natural walking angle, slight shifts in position can make the numbers just disappear. So to demonstrate that, I place my camera at the exact walking angle. And you can see that the markings wash out just by sliding the ruler. And this is just on the normal workshop lighting. It's really weird. And you have to move your head quite often to read the scale properly again. And that's why we put extra effort into minimizing reflection, so it stays readable from most angles in real use. And that's one of the reasons why we give it a titanium surface treatment. It's not just for great looks. It's there to keep the scale readable. Now when we hold our scale next to the woodpeckers and slide them the same way, the difference is just brutal. Or stays readable, while the woodpeckers becomes completely unreadable at some points. And here's a quick preview of our TrueGrid layout tool, the tool I designed to create a CNC accurate grid of dog holes on your workbench. And it has so many smart features, I honestly can't wait to show it to you. And we're in the final stage now, so if you are in the market for a tool like this, I'll be bold and say hold on to your money just a little longer, because there's a very good chance TrueGrid is going to raise the bar. Both are combination tools, but they start from a different foundation. And you notice that difference right away when you start using them for measuring and marking. We built ours as a fixed T-ruler first, with a protractor section added on top. So in normal use, it's basically our T-ruler without compromise. And you can do everything I showed you earlier in this video. Woodpeckers, on the other hand, works like a combination square, and the ruler slides through the protractor head. And that means that the scale starts at the opposite side compared to a classic T-ruler workflow. So if I want to mark 250 millimeters, for example, I have to slide the ruler out, set the length, mark, and if I want the next line, I'm setting it again. And that's where, in my opinion, a T-ruler is simply more efficient. But also with these longer sliding rulers, marking a small distance is no longer very practical. The ruler has to stick out so far that the balance shifts and it wants to rip off the bench. So if you have to choose between these two, it is easier to use a T-ruler for this as well. And maybe this sounds like I do not like combination squares, but that's not true. They are fantastic tools, but for me, only the smaller ones. So as a measuring and marking tool, I think our approach better fits the average workshop workflow. So let's see how our angle ruler stacks up when it comes to setting angles. And here we choose a different direction. Woodpeckers is a true protractor with 1 degree markings from 0 to 180 degrees. And we built ours as an angle ruler, focused on readability and accurate setup. So we choose 5 degree increments. And for most woodworking we think that is the sweet spot, but if you want single degree settings, that's where the woodpecker has the advantage. So we focus particularly on the most accurate angle settings, and in this shot you can see that our 5 degree scale is clearer, but we also added 2 reference points which make angle setting very accurate. But to keep it fair, although I prefer our scale, you can perfectly set the 5 degree index on the woodpeckers as well, and it even has some positive stops on common use angles. Another difference is the scale reference. On our angle ruler, square is 0. This is the same way your miter saw and miter gauge work. So if I set it to 20 degrees and draw a line, I can walk straight to the miter saw, set 20 degrees, and the cut line match perfectly. On the woodpecker's protractor, square is 90 degrees, which is perfectly valid. It's just a different reference. So to match the same 20 degree line, I have to set the woodpeckers to 70 degrees. So you can say that our is more saw native and the woodpecker is more protractor native. So if you are used to classic protractors, their scale will feel more familiar. And another design difference is that we made our rulers adjustable. With woodpeckers you have to rely on factory tolerances. And while I think you can trust woodpeckers on that point, when I tested the woodpecker against my reference, there was some small deviation. Still within tolerances, so no drama. But if I could have adjusted, I would. And that's precisely why the TrueMark T-rulers are adjustable. When it comes to calibrating our angle ruler, you set the T section first. And after that, you can calibrate the protractor scale. And we include 2 alignment pins to lock the base and the protractor section together. And then it's just a matter of loosening 2 screws aligning the scale and tightening everything back down. When it comes to build quality, I think it's safe to say that Woodpeckers products are the benchmark. Woodpeckers is one of those companies that make tool choices emotional, and that's one reason I end up buying some. They're just beautiful. But our ambition was to beat Woodpeckers at the strongest point, build quality. And I won't argue, their base is seriously overbuilt and it looks awesome. Our approach was different. A wide bar for stability, but kept lighter for better handling. But I have to say that with our ruler, we made brave choices. Our ruler is made of manganese spring steel, extremely tough, and with a titanium surface treatment, it's built for real durability. It's a step up from the carbon steel you usually see in high-end tools. And here's another thing. Spring steel doesn't stay bent. It always wants to return to straight. So when I flex ours, it just springs back. And you can imagine that that helps when it accidentally drops. So I got curious how my woodpecker would react to that same abuse. But as you can see, it's not that forgiving when you treat it like this. Luckily, a T-ruler doesn't need to be bendable, so this shouldn't be a deal breaker if a woodpecker is on your shortlist. But I did want to show you that we made all rulers from extremely tough materials and finishes designed for real workshop abuse. And the downside is simple. It's harder and more expensive to machine properly. So we didn't choose this material and treatments to keep the price low. We choose them to build a ruler with exceptional quality built to last. So there's a lot of thought behind the design of our TrueMark T-rulers, and maybe not every design choice would be your personal choice. That's totally fair, but I do hope this video shows you one thing clearly. Even the top brands still leave room for real workshop driven improvements. So maybe the perfect T-ruler doesn't exist, but I truly believe we've come very, very close. And when you are interested in these T-rulers, you can find a link in the description of this video. It will be an honor if one of these ends up on your workbench. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think. And if you'd like to see more Tool Labs episodes like this. Have a great day and we'll see each other next time.